Fire. It's one of the greatest hazards you can face at sea. Even a very small fire, and they all start small, can quickly become a major disaster. It can threaten not just the vessel and its cargo, but also your life and the lives of your workmates. What's more, even if a fire doesn't kill you, it can change your life, your appearance, or your ability to provide for yourself and the people who depend on you. It's vital to be proactive about fire safety, and that should include the master leading the effort to foster a strong safety culture amongst everyone on board. You can play your part by making sure that you think fire every day you are on a ship. It's key to keeping yourself and your workmates safe. In this program, we look at why fires start, how they spread, and most importantly, how to prevent them. In the next section, we'll begin by looking at the elements needed to produce a fire. Fire is a chemical reaction between a flammable material and oxygen. It results in heat, light, and often smoke. There are three elements needed to produce a fire. Something that will burn, fuel, a source of ignition, heat, and the support for combustion, oxygen, usually as part of air. Bring these three components together and they create fire. When it comes to extinguishing a fire, a fourth element, the chemical reaction between the flammable material and the oxygen, also comes into play. Remove any one of these four elements and you extinguish the fire. That's the basis of all fire prevention measures. The components needed to create a fire are all around us. Let's begin by looking at sources of ignition. Direct ignition occurs when a spark or flame sets fire to a substance that will burn in the presence of air or an oxidizing agent. The sources of direct ignition are numerous. A naked flame, a spark from friction, sparks from electric or oxyacetylene welding, or impact, such as dropping a steel spanner on a metal surface. A lit cigarette. Funnel sparks. A spark generated by static electricity. Or electrical equipment arcing, or short-circuiting. Heat transfer is another source of ignition and comes in three main forms: radiation, conduction, and convection. Radiation is the transfer of energy from one source to another. For example, the sun's rays can cause a fire, especially if focused through a lens, or even a cracked porthole glass. And a toaster can ignite what is inside it, even though there is no direct contact. Conduction is the transfer of heat by contact. An iron can transfer heat to a shirt. Even though there is no direct flame, there is sufficient heat to start a fire. Arc welding is not only a source of direct ignition. Conducted heat also passes through the metal and can set fire to what is on the other side. If a cloth is draped over a lamp, the hot glass of the light bulb can cause the fabric to ignite. Convection works by heating air. Many domestic heaters rely on this principle. As the air is warmed, it rises and circulates around the room. However, if the heat cannot escape and concentrates in one area, the air can become so hot that it will set fire to any flammable material. The second element required for a fire is fuel. Most flammable substances fall into one of three categories: carbonaceous material, flammable liquids, and flammable gases. Carbonaceous material is any solid, non-metallic material which will burn if ignited and leaves a residue of ash when it does. There are many examples of this on board most ships. The list includes wood, paper, rubber, some plastics, most bedding, and cloth like curtains, sheets, rags and so on. Flammable liquids are also common on board ship and include petroleum spirits, paints and oils, paint thinners and kerosene, among others. Most ships would have flammable gases on board, like acetylene and propane. Some tankers may also carry liquefied gases such as LPG or LNG. The third component is oxygen. It is oxygen that sustains a fire. Without this vital ingredient, a fire will go out by itself. Smoke is a very important part of a fire. It's often the first and sometimes the only sign of a fire. There are a number of ways smoke can give us information about a fire, including its volume, density, direction and speed of travel, colour, smell and type of flow. These can tell us a lot about a fire: what's burning, where the source of the fire is, how big it is, and where it could be going next, for example. Another thing to remember about smoke is how dangerous it is. 7 out of 10 fire-related deaths are caused not by flames, but by inhaling smoke and other fumes. Notice when this polystyrene cup is raised from the cooler air near the deck into hot smoke, how fast it melts. Imagine the damage that heat and smoke could do to you. There's more information about smoke and what it can tell us, as well as the other topics covered in this programme, in the workbook. Knowing how fires start is key to knowing how to prevent them. When combustion takes place, whether the substance is solid or liquid, it is the gas or vapours given off by the product that burn, and not the material itself. The flash point is the lowest temperature at which a product gives off enough flammable vapour so that it will flash if ignited. The ignition temperature is the lowest temperature at which a substance will continue to burn once it's alight. And finally, the self-ignition temperature is the lowest temperature at which the substance will catch fire without an external source of ignition. It's vital that a regular fire risk assessment should be carried out in all areas of the ship to identify any dangers and risks. Where a risk of fire is identified, that risk must be eliminated or reduced. Ways to do this could include removing a possible fire source, or providing extra fire prevention, detection and firefighting equipment to the area. The workbook which comes with this series of programs contains a sample fire risk assessment checklist, which will help with this. The next step is to create or update the risk assessment for fire risk areas, to include monitoring, access, equipment availability, training and alarm systems. The ship's fire training and drills should be based on the risk assessment. As well as general measures like these, every single person on board must think fire at all times. Be proactive. Look out for problems, including any that aren't necessarily connected with your own work. If you see a fire door which has been wedged open, for example, don't leave it as it is. Make sure it's closed. Then let an officer know about it. Refresher training on safety procedures may be needed. Be on the lookout for any problems with cargo, like fumes, right from when it's being loaded.
Chief mate, Alvin.
For instance, wet conditions during loading could lead to combustion once the ship is en route. On container ships, when containers are loaded, watch out for any signs that there may be something wrong, like leakage or damage. Make sure contractors and stevedores follow the ship's safety rules, including having permits to work where needed. There's more information about this in the Videotel programmes Shipboard Familiarisation under STCW Parts 1 and 2. If you see a problem, let the officer of the watch know about it. And make sure that you follow the permit to work system yourself, especially in terms of any hot work. If you need to, you can always refer to the Code of Safe Working Practices where this applies, or the ship's safety management system. Another key part of preventing fires starting is good housekeeping, as well as maintaining good lighting and cleanliness. We'll cover more about this in the next section of the programme. The galley is an area of the ship where there are lots of potential risks. A cloth on a hot plate that's been left on, an overheated pan of oil, ovens that have been left on when they're not being used, or pans on a stove that have been left unattended. Don't leave ovens and hot plates unattended, and always switch them off after use. Keep combustible materials like cloths away from heat sources. Preventing a fire means good housekeeping. Keeping your work environment and equipment clean is very important. If a fire starts in a greasy cooker hood, the trunking can help it to spread to other parts of the accommodation and make it much more difficult to put out. Avoid the problem. Keep the hood and filters free from grease with regular cleaning. Clean all equipment regularly. Electrical installations can also cause problems. Too many appliances connected to one power point can overload the socket and cause the wires to overheat and burn. Frayed wires and broken plugs represent another hazard. A bad connection will arc and could result in a fire. Always pull out the plugs to appliances when they are not being used. Also, check that high voltage cables are in good condition. Make sure that flammable materials are not stored near such cables. The engine room is an area with lots of fuel and heat sources, so extra care may be needed to maintain safety. Take additional precautions when changing over from heavy fuel oil to distillate fuels, particularly if this is not done often. Distillate fuel could leak at pump glands and seals and cause a fire. Do not permit oily rags to accumulate. Cotton that is impregnated with oil may spontaneously ignite. Even wet cotton waste is a potential fire risk because of the possibility of spontaneous combustion. Put all used rags in closed metal containers for disposal. As we've noted, cleanliness is essential. For example, new equipment or spare parts may come in some kind of packaging. Never leave discarded wood, plastic, paper or packaging in the engine room, workshop or anywhere else. Try to keep the bilges free of oil and water and keep the tank tops very clean. Engine room plates must also be kept free from oil. If any lagging or insulation has become impregnated with oil, replace it as soon as practicably possible and report any oil leaks immediately. Dirty or poorly maintained fuel oil burner tips are a serious risk. Oil drops can accumulate at the bottom of the furnace and could cause an explosion. It's essential to keep these tips clean with regular servicing and inspection. Electrical equipment can provide sources of ignition. It must be properly maintained and regularly inspected. The electrician or the engineer with assigned electrical responsibilities should check the earth meters, which show the state of the electrical system. Any faults found should be traced and repaired or isolated immediately. Also, water can create a short circuit. Water leaks, steam, and even condensation may create a fire risk. You must always follow proper hot work procedures. This includes making sure that you have a permit to work before any hot work begins.
And how about the foam applicator?
Make sure there is no flammable material in the area. That means checking behind, above and below where the work is to take place. Has somebody been assigned to keep a fire watch?
Yes, sir.
Follow the procedures set out in the ship's SMS.
Oh, smoke!
As well as this, the right kind of firefighting appliances must be available nearby and ready for immediate use. On a tanker, careless actions could lead to an explosion. Before permission is given to weld on or close to a fuel or oil tank, fire risks must be eliminated or controlled. If possible, make sure that the tank and adjacent tanks and spaces are completely empty, gas-free and ventilated. Tankers and other vessels carrying flammable cargoes prohibit trailing electrical leads on outside decks. Something could drop on the lead and cause a short circuit. Or rain could penetrate damaged cables or connections, creating another source of danger. For this reason, all relevant equipment must be tested before use to make sure it's electrically protected. Arcing circuit breakers also increase electrical safety and should be checked regularly. If work is to take place in a cargo hold, check the appropriate guidelines to see what fire risk precautions must be taken for the type of cargo. For items like coal and wood chips, that will be the International Maritime Solid Bulk Cargoes Code. Or, in the case of packaged items, the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. Remember that static electricity can cause fires. So, before pouring flammable liquids into another container, always electrically discharge the container, either by touching the cans together or to the metal of the ship. Smoking is a fire hazard. When you light a cigarette, you light a fire. Smoke only in areas permitted under company rules. Particularly on tankers and other hazardous cargo ships, these may be strictly limited. Under no circumstances, smoke while passing through a no-smoking zone. This is highly dangerous and a very serious offence. And even if smoking is permitted, Never smoke in bed. If you must smoke, get out of bed to do so, and before you get back into bed again, put the cigarette out. Wherever you are smoking on board, when you put out a cigarette, make sure it is completely extinguished. Where possible, use only safety ashtrays with covers. When emptying any ashtray, make sure it does not contain any smouldering material. In port, while working cargo or tank cleaning, there may be further restrictions that limit smoking to 1 or 2 permitted areas. Visitors must be made fully aware of the ship's no smoking rules before they board. Signs must be clearly posted either at the top or the bottom of the gangway. No visitor should carry sources of ignition into prohibited areas of the vessel. That doesn't just mean matches, lighters and so on, but also other items which could generate a spark, such as a mobile phone, camera, tablet or laptop, or any other types of non-approved equipment. Finally, remember that it's vital to be proactive about fire safety. If you see, hear or smell something that you think is not as it should be,
Good morning, Bridge.
Yeah, they discovered a smoke in the meeting.
Okay, right. Close all doors.
report the matter to the duty officer immediately.
Today's Saturday, today we have safety day.
Think fire every day you are on board ship. It's key to keeping yourself and your workmates safe. You can find more information about the topics we've covered in the workbook. Next, let's briefly look back at some key points from this programme. There are 3 elements needed to produce a fire: fuel, heat, and oxygen. Together, they create fire. But if you remove any one of them, or a 4th element, the chemical reaction between the flammable material and the oxygen, you extinguish the fire. Fires start either with direct ignition or heat transfer. Flammable substances include carbonaceous material, flammable liquids, and flammable gases. Without oxygen, a fire will go out by itself. Whether a substance is solid or liquid, it is the gas or vapours it gives off that burn, not the material itself. Help prevent fires starting by thinking fire at all times. Be proactive. Look out for problems with containers or other cargo, like leakage or damage. Make sure contractors follow the ship's safety rules. Report any problems. Follow the permit to work system. And practice good housekeeping. Keep combustible materials away from heat. Keep your work environment clean. Check electrical installations regularly for any problems. In the engine room, keep air, fuel and heat separate. Take care with oily or wet rags and put any used rags in closed metal containers for disposal. If you must smoke, smoke only in permitted areas, and when you put out a cigarette, make sure it's extinguished. Never smoke in bed. And finally, visitors must not bring prohibited items like matches, lighters, mobile phones and so on into restricted areas. Posters are an effective way of reminding seafarers about safe working practices. There's more information about posters in the workbook. This Videotel programme is the first in a series of 5 on firefighting at sea. Programme 2, the next in the series, deals with basic firefighting. Program 3 with command and control at the incident, Program 4 with command and control by the master, and Program 5 with machinery space fires. Further information can be found in the workbook which accompanies this series of programs.